Hey guys, welcome back. I had some questions from my last video on effects spillover about the advantages of parallel effects routing and wanted to talk to you about A, what parallel effects routing is, and B, while it's useful. So let's do something with this patch here. This is just a straight up high gain patch with the Atomica, and I've copied the settings that Justin York suggested in the thread on the Atomica amp on the forum. Basically, crank the bass and mids, turn the treble up and the presence up quite a bit, leave the master where it is, kind of leave everything else at stock settings, and give it a little bit of saturation. Sounds awesome. Have a listen to this. Really good if you dig the 80s or just hot-rodded plexitones in general. Okay, what I'm going to do is I've got a delay happening here. It's a tape delay. Have a listen when I turn it on. With plenty of repeats. Let's add, say you wanted to add reverb to that. For kind of high gain rock rhythms, I actually really like the London Plate reverb. Mix around 10%. Stock settings. Let's have a listen to what that does now. Sounds pretty cool. If I really turn the reverb and the delay level and feedback up, let's say 50% on the reverb, these are pretty extreme settings, not normally where I would set them, but we're going to exaggerate for effect. I'll turn the delay mix up, say to 60% or something. No, I'll leave it at 50%. I still want to be able to hear my original signal. So have a listen to this. You are going to hear reverb on the delay repeats because everything is running in series. Sounds pretty cool. What if you just wanted to hear reverb on the original signal and then you wanted the delay repeats to just sound like the original guitar signal delayed? Well, you'd want to use parallel effects routing, right? This is B. This is the reason we want to do it. Say you want the delay repeats and the reverb to be separate. We're going to connect them in separate parallel chains. And to answer question A, here's how you do it. So I'm going to drag the delay up here. I'm going to drag the delay down here. I just said drag the delay. I meant drag the reverb. And then I'm going to connect a chain which goes all the way through. And I will hook these guys up like so in parallel. Now, there's a couple of things that we need to take note of that are really, really, really important. Before you do anything, set the mix on both blocks to 100%. And rather than use a mix control, we're going to use the level control to control how loud the repeats are relative to this guy here, the dry signal. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set the bypass mode to mute effects in on both of them so that I can get spillover. If you don't want spillover, use mute effects out. What I mean by spillover is, of course, when you turn each block off, if the repeats continue or if they are cut off harshly. I like mute effects in, so I'm going to leave them both there. Now, if you set these to through, you're going to set the gain staging wrong, basically. The preset's going to get about 3 dB louder. Well, it should get exactly 3 dB louder. So if you've got two parallel rows, suddenly you go from having a nicely balanced preset to being 6 dB louder, which is not what we want. So set the bypass mode to mute effects in, set the mix to 100%. And let's start with the level on each of these at -6 dB. Now that we've done that, here's the dry sound again. I can add delay. I can add reverb now, but when you have a listen to the delay repeats, I'm actually going to turn the delay up so we can hear the repeats a bit better. That's cool. Now, when I add the reverb, you'll notice that the delay repeats are not reverberated. This is pretty cool. So you hear the reverb die out naturally, but you hear the delay repeats continue on unaffected. And I think that's pretty cool. This is nice because if I want to turn the reverb way down, so I can just use it as kind of a thickening effect on my rhythm sound. That's about right. So just a tiny little bit of reverb, but then I want a lot of delay, and I want the delay to sort of be clean, you know, free from reverb. I've set that up now with parallel effects routing. Let's try it. You can hear that the delay repeats, even though it's way overblown from what I would normally use. They don't have reverb on them, which is really nice. It sort of keeps everything clean and crisp, almost like you're using a mixer in a big rack. And we can use parallel effects routing in some pretty creative ways as well. We don't just have to do it with the delay and reverb blocks. For example, say you've got two drive pedals that you really like. You know, maybe you've got something like the FET boost for a clean boost and then something really disgusting like a fuzz. And you want to use them together, but you don't want to cascade the gain. You kind of want to mix the character between the two pedals. Or you might want two pedals, say for example, like a super overdrive and a tube screamer, which have different clipping qualities, and sort of blend them together. Well, we can do that. And I think this is a really, really fun thing to do. Not a very typical thing you can do in the real world, but obviously in the Axe effects, we can do stuff that, you know, you cannot do in the real world. So I'm gonna set up two drive blocks. Let's try this. I'm gonna have our Boss SD1 in this drive block. Let's bring that guy up. Really, really good sounding drive block, I think. And I'll set the drive low. I'll turn the tone down a little bit. I'm just going to have a tube screamer over here as my second drive block. And again, we'll make sure that with each of these, we set the gain staging appropriately. I'm going to set them pretty similarly. And we'll go bypass mode, mute, so that when they're off, they're off. And there's no dry signal flowing through. So let's do this. This is kind of fun. Let's have a listen to just the dry sound. Which is very different to cascading them together. I might want to crank the drive on the tube screamer, for example, and the tone, and go for something slightly different on the super overdrive. I'll leave that where it is. Let's have a listen to that. Maybe let's crank the tone here. Another thing you could try is put something really outrageous like a fuzz here and, you know, turn the mix down to, or say the level down quite a bit. So we're just introducing some hard clipping. And there we basically blend the best qualities of both worlds there in with our dry signal. Of course, if you just want to hear the effects together, cut out this block here and you will hear a volume blend between these two. This is what that sounds like. I need to delete that. Sorry. Let's check it out. A couple of other blocks that this is really cool to try out with is a wah block in parallel with a tremolo block, or a wah block in parallel with a rotary block. That's really fun. Any of your modulation effects like phases and choruses and stuff like that. Although in general, connecting those effects in parallel doesn't make much sense because they normally have to pass a dry signal anyway. So in that case, you would want to turn the mix all the way up to 100%. Otherwise, yeah, you can do so many things with parallel effects routing and really be creative with it and use it in non-traditional ways. It's obviously great with delay and reverb and stuff like that to kind of keep your signal clean. But at the same time, like I've shown here, you can use a drive block. You can use like a drive block in parallel with a wah block, which is pretty cool. Maybe I'll do that right now just so we can hear it. I'll remove this. So this is what it sounds like. I'll actually set this to be an auto wah while we're at it by assigning the LFO there. So wah and drive in parallel. And while we're at it, like I was saying, let's chuck a rotary block in parallel as well. Have I connected this? I'll set that to mute. Rotary block, yeah. Let's have a listen to this. So there's one experiment which will hopefully inspire you to play around with parallel effects routing both before the amp and after the amp. If you enjoyed this little video and it answered some of your questions, please consider subscribing and checking out my other AX8 videos. Cheers!